So this lesson is about factoring trinomials that look like this. Well, a trinomial just means try, like 3, so 1, 2, 3 terms. Now, this looks kind of confusing, but really it just means that there's no number in front of the x squared, and there's a number in front of the x and a number out here. So in other words, it could look like this. Maybe an x squared plus 5x plus 6 or something. So this is a trinomial that looks like this pattern. There's a number here and a number here. Okay, these are pretty easy to factor if you just consider one thing. You might have already remembered how to do distributive property, which would be something that looks like this. I give you two things, and you have to multiply these together. You'll remember that when you're multiplying, you probably need to do the distributive property. And if I showed you this, you'd probably remember what distributive property is. Remember, just do that. So this would be a 2x plus 6. Well, over here, you have to do the distributive property twice. So I'll distribute that one. And I'll also distribute this one. And some people, almost everyone actually, calls this FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. Well, that's just a distributive property twice, is all that is. FOIL is just the acronym that helps you remember all the parts. Okay, so once you FOIL, you'll want to combine all your like terms, which is usually the middle two. Okay, and then you're done. That's how you multiply things. Well, factoring, as I said in the previous lesson, factoring just means undoing the multiplying part, or in other words, listing the things that multiply together to give you what you're trying to factor. So if I asked you to factor this, the two factors, since I just showed you that these two things multiply together to this, that means if you tried to factor this, it would need to look these two right here, x plus 2 times x plus 3. Well, let's talk about how to actually find those. So what you're going to do is you're going to set yourself up a shell. Your shell is going to look like this. You're going to go ahead and fill in the two things that go in here. Okay, so if we're going to undo FOIL, first times first must give me this. So that's usually just an x and an x, or a y and a y, or a b and a b, or whatever your variable is. That's what goes here and here. Okay, so first times first is pretty easy. Also, last times last is pretty easy. This number times this number, last times last, has got to give you this number. So when you're factoring, you say, what two numbers multiply to this and add together to give me this number? So as we just saw, this answer will be a 2 and a 3. And my signs are both positive because positive 2 and positive 3 multiply together to give me 6. And they add together to give me 5. So multiply to this number, add to this number. Well, let's try this one. This one looks a little bit harder. We'll set up our shell. And again, the easiest part's putting your x and your x in, first slots. Multiplies to negative 24 and adds to negative 5. Well, 24 has a lot of factors, so this might take us a while, but we could make a list of things that multiply to 24 if we wanted. You'll notice that once we get to 4 times 6, the next one is 6 times 4, but that's the same thing. We don't have to keep listing all these, because these were already up there. So you can stop right here. Once you repeat yourself, you're done. So these are the things that multiply to 24. Which one of these pairs will add to negative 5? Well, then you got to say none of them do. That's because we're looking for something that multiplies to negative 24. And you'll remember that when two things multiply together and the answer is a negative number, that means that one of these two is a negative number. Not both of them, just one of them. So one of these guys has got to be negative on these pairs. And that's how we're going to get them to add to negative 5. So right here, if 8 was negative and 3 was positive, negative 8 times positive 3 gives me negative 24. Negative 8 plus positive 3 gives me negative 5. Again, when the last number is negative, that tells you that your signs are different, because that's the only way you can get a negative number when you're multiplying, is if one of these two has a negative sign. So once you try to factor this one, you can pause it and wait and see if you can get it by yourself. Here's what I got. Put my shell down. This is going to be an M and an M. What two things multiply to 20 and add to 9? Well, 1 and 20 multiplies to 20, but that adds to 21, not 9. 2 and 10 makes 12, not 9. 4 times 5 makes 20. 4 plus 5 makes 9. Now let me show you something. If this looked like this, my factors would be almost the same. The only difference is I'm looking for my addition to add to negative 9. Well, when you're adding positive numbers together, you never get a negative number. So that means that something else must be happening. It kind of looks like this. Negative 4 and negative 5 will make negative 9 when you add, but these will also give you a positive number when you multiply. So when you're multiplying and this number is positive, sometimes the two numbers are positive, sometimes the two numbers are negative. So watch out for that.